If you have ever been burned by a personal or professional relationship, then you've experienced the hurt. Trust takes a lifetime to build and really, honestly, only a few moments to destroy. Because deep down, trust is a deep sense of security, a quiet confidence that someone or something is reliable, reputable, safe, and has your back. But when that trust is shattered, everything else starts to crumble. I mean, the happiness, the joy, the peace, it's quickly replaced by fear and paranoia and heartache. And we're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. So the experts would say, yeah, trust is essential when it comes to our relationships. And if we're honest today, it's really no different than with our relationship with God. The hardest time to trust God are the times when you and I need to trust Him the most. Listen, it's easy to trust Him when our health is great, our jobs are secure, our bank accounts are loaded, and the sun is shining out there. But the minute tragedy strikes and our world is turned upside down, then what? As we continue in this summer series on what makes Christians different, Jesus takes us to a remote mountainside location near the Sea of Galilee, far away from the towns and villages, and sits us down with a crowd of people and drives home this really important truth. It's all about trust. As we explore the scriptures, there's plenty of examples of God providing for people's physical needs. During a devastating famine, Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy grain so the family wouldn't starve to death. Wandering in the wilderness, Moses and the Israelites didn't have the time or the tools to plant crops. So God provided them with quail and manna and fresh water. Running for his life from a wicked Queen Jezebel, famished, exhausted, Elijah collapses in the dirt, and God sends an angel with fresh bread and water. He's kind of got this track record, this reputation of taking care of people's physical needs. And that's where our gospel begins. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. This is way before smartphones and social media. But word traveled really, really fast through Galilee. King Herod brutally murdered John the Baptist, cutting off his head, putting it on a platter, parading it around as a party trick, all at the whim of a dancing teenage girl and her mom. I can't even begin to imagine what was going through Jesus' head and his heart. I mean, he was more than just a prophet. John the Baptist was Jesus' relative. He was his cousin. And he was also his forerunner. I can't even begin to imagine what was going through the disciples. I mean, some of the disciples were actually former followers of John. And I wonder, was Satan working on their hearts in this moment? Were they starting to spiral out of control, asking questions like, Jesus is God, then why did he let this happen? Or was John really God's prophet? Or how about Jesus? Is Jesus really who he says he is? Listen, they were mentally and emotionally exhausted by the news. And they needed to slip away from the crowds. So they got into a boat so they could go to a private place for some private instruction and prayer. But you heard it in the gospel, as the boat's drifting into shore, they are met by a massive crowd of people. And to the disciples, it was just a crowd of nameless faces. But to Jesus, it was so much more. Because he saw that elderly man in the back who was struggling to hear. The grandma riddled with arthritis. The anxious mother. The proud father who didn't know how he was going to put food on the table that night. The rebellious teen. The shy preschooler. And yes, even the little infant, cute and cuddly, with a serious birth defect that no one knows about. To Jesus, it was so much more. And so he sets aside his grief and he has compassion. He climbs out of the boat, rolls up his sleeves, and he gets to work instructing and healing. And then our gospel tells us that some time passed. Disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place. It's getting really, really late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." All right, disciples, right? I mean, way to help out. They're just being practical. And if we're honest, yeah, this is a really remote location. I mean, there is no Jimmy John's. There's no Golden Arches. There's no DoorDash or Pinpoint Domino's delivery. But Jesus turned to them and said, they don't need to go away. You feed them. You do it. Can you see the disciples' reaction? The puzzled look on their faces, the frustration, the BP's rising, the eye rolls. What? Mentally and emotionally exhausted by the news, they too are now hungry and they have to do this? Feed this crowd? We have to remember that the disciples struggled at times. They liked to push people away. They had a reputation of doing that, actually. Like the Canaanite woman who was pleading for help for her demon-possessed daughter, or the parents who try to bring their little ones to Jesus. In this moment, Jesus is teaching the disciples an important truth, that the way they think and the way they operate is not the same way that God thinks and operates. In this moment, he's driving home patience and trust. That even during the most difficult, stressful, chaotic moments in life, God provides for people's physical needs. We only have 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. I kind of sense maybe they did this sarcastically, like, now what? And listen to what Jesus said. Bring them to me. Jesus then directed the people to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and he broke the loaves. I mean, we're talking about 15, 20,000 people, men, women, children who are hungry, stomachs growling, ready to dive into this little bit of food. And what does Jesus do? First things first, right? Lifts his eyes heavenward, grabbing everyone's attention. What's he doing? And he gives thanks to the one from whom all blessings flow. He's reminding all of them of what the psalm writer said in Psalm 135. The eyes of all look to you, O Lord, and you give them their food at the proper time. You, Lord, open your hands and satisfy the desires of every living thing. So how many times have you and I prayed in the Lord's Prayer, give us today our daily bread? You realize when we pray that, we're actually confessing that our health and our home, our money and material blessings, yes, even our family and friends, and the food in front of us are all from one source. They're all from God. Yes, God can miraculously provide for us. He could take the food in our pantries and our fridges and multiply them every week so we wouldn't have to go shopping. But that's not how he operates. He chooses natural means. So what does that mean? Well, he's the one that causes the rain to soften the soil. And he's the one that packs the soil with rich nutrients. He's the one that causes that sun to shine to warm the soil so it causes the seed to grow. He's the one that gives engineers the ability and the smarts to create combines and these storage silos. And he gives businesses the ability to transport and to share that food with us. And then on top of all of that, he gives each and every one of us unique gifts to go out and work a career, a job that we actually love so we can earn a paycheck and put that food on the table. And behind every step of the process, God is providing. So before you go home today and you dive into that lunch meal, how about first things first? How about we pause and we lift our eyes to the one from whom all blessings flow, especially that food in front of us today, and do what James said. Every act of giving and every result of giving is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights. Let's look to the Father and give him thanks. Trust is essential. It's all about trusting God, that God provides for our physical needs. Now, if we page through the scripture some more, we're going to see that God not only takes care of our physical needs, but also our spiritual needs. Well, why is that? Because we are sinful. He says every inclination of the human heart is wicked and evil all the time, that all have turned aside, they have together become corrupt. There is no one who does good. So we're in big trouble, right? I mean, you see examples of Jacob needing forgiveness for his trickery, and Jacob's sons needing forgiveness for their jealousy, and Moses and the Israelites needing forgiveness for all their complaining and criticizing of God, and even got David who let his eyes wander and committed adultery and murder. But what we see through all of that is that God has a track record, a reputation of providing for people's souls. And the disciples in our reading needed some soul food. Because here they look. They are looking at 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, massive crowd. 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, massive crowd. And they are frustrated. What are we doing here? This is impossible. And do you see what's happening? They were looking at the insurmountable obstacle in front of them rather than looking at God, rather than trusting God to provide for their needs. So our gospel tells us. Jesus gave thanks, he broke it, gave it to him, and had to distribute. And as it's being distributed, this miracle occurs. Our gospel says they all ate. This massive crowd, they all ate and were satisfied. That's Thanksgiving Day stuffed. And then the disciples went around and picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces that were left over. Listen, Jesus didn't put on some theatrics here. He wasn't putting on a show. Didn't take a loaf of bread and some fish and smack them together and draw attention. He didn't use a whirlwind to bring in Bobby Flay as some impossible cooking challenge. He just quietly, miraculously did what he does best. Provided for all of their physical needs, every single one of them. As if to say to the disciples, "O ye of little faith, nothing is impossible for God." So, what's your insurmountable obstacle you're staring at right now? What are you struggling with right now? Is it planning a wedding? Maybe making a room ready at the house for the newest family addition? Searching for a new career? Broken relationship? Struggling to put or make ends meet? Is it moving into an assisted living center? A heavy heart watching your firstborn child going off to preschool for the first time, or college maybe? Is it coping with the diagnosis? What about us as members of Grace? What about these ministries? I mean, we want to be good stewards of everything God's given us, right? Are we doing the right thing? Are we making the right decisions? How are we going to survive? So we step back and we look at the gospel, right? And we have to realize that just like the disciples, we tend to throw our hands up and overreact. That we tend to come to God and say, look it, 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, now what? Right? We don't have the time, the energy, the strength to do this. What are we doing here? This is impossible. That's the exact moment, though, that God says, bring it to me. Bring your fears, bring your worries, your doubts, your anxieties, your stress. Bring it to me. Because nothing is impossible for God. And look what happened, 12 basketfuls. He didn't just give them a little. He gave them more than they wanted, more than they could imagine. And if he did that physically, how much more spiritually for us? Isn't that what King David said in Psalm 23? My cup overflows. God's grace, mercy, love, it's overflowing constantly to us in a miracle far more spectacular than the one in our gospel. Jesus gave his life for ours, his death for the death we deserve, his resurrection so we can live with him in heaven. He wraps us in the robes of his righteousness through the waters of baptism, and he gives us personal assurance. We are loved and we are forgiven in that special meal. We sang it in our verse of the day. If God is for us, then who can actually stand against us? If God, who gave his only son, Jesus, then he answers you, I will give you everything else too. It's all about trust. Trusting God to provide for our spiritual needs. So I'll go back to those experts. Those experts nailed it, right? When it comes to personal and professional relationships, trust is essential. But even more with our relationship with God. And so we come back to our worship series. What makes Christians different? Well, here it is. With faith-filled hearts that believe in Jesus, empowered by his love, mercy, and grace, we can leave these doors today and confidently say that no matter what happens, we lack nothing because the Lord is the one from whom all blessings flow, both physically and spiritually, now and forevermore. It's all about trust. Amen.